get full access to RFR only on Patreon. Become a member of the RFR Patreon community to get more Rebel Force Radio. Bonus shows and content are available right now only at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times. Star Wars #1.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right. Rebel Force Radio back with another live broadcast. So if you're listening to this on delayed podcast, you are out of luck. You can't call in. That's why you've got to be following us on Facebook. Also be checking things out at rebelforceradio.com, and you will hear when we're going to do these live shows and when you can call in. If you are within the sound of our voices right now, please give us a call. The number is 708-866-1737. We're going to be getting to your calls, and we're going to try to get to more calls than we did on our Thanksgiving show. We know that we had a lot more callers than we were able to get through, so we're going to try our very, very best to get through as many as we can. So thank you so much. What a pleasure to be with you. We like to do these types of things around the holiday season because it's the holiday season where we're all reminded of what matters most. And I got to say, what matters most as a podcaster is the listeners, because without the listeners, there is no podcast. It's just me and Jimmy Mack on a Skype call once a week. And as we've said before, we'd probably be doing this anyway. But still, the fact that you're listening 12 years after we began our podcast adventures here means the world to us. So we know that you guys follow this stuff probably better than we do. So why not let you provide the table for us, right? You serve up the dishes tonight. So there's lots of things we can talk about. But before we get to those discussion topics, I'd like to introduce, if you're new to the program, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yeah, you serve the dishes and we'll wash them.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that's a new T-shirt.
By hand tonight. By hand.
By hand, definitely.
Yeah.
So we do have a lot of calls lined up. 1-708-866-1737. That's 1-708-866-1RFR. And we have a lot of calls lined up. If you guys want to jump in and, talk about some of our rewatch of The Last Jedi and some things we had to say last week about that, maybe the latest Marvel comics or Star Wars Resistance, essentially the stuff that Swank won't talk to me about on the normal show. I just...
Yeah, the stuff that I poo-poo, please. Just because I poo-poo it doesn't mean that you can't talk about it. We'd love to hear. I mean, we've got...
I'm happy to talk about even like things like The Empire Strikes Back. So, I mean, there's no restrictions here. Put anything and everything you want on the table except for Star Wars Lego. And
wait a minute. I like Star Wars Lego. Are you talking about?
There you go.
Wait a minute. Are you talking about what, the animation stuff? Or are you talking about Star Wars Lego sets, like the physical?
I'm talking about
toys?
the whole thing, pal. The whole. Let's just.
I think you feel about Star Wars Lego the way I feel about the quote unquote classic Star Wars Marvel garbage that you're so fond of.
Well, but that's not fair because I've at least watched some of that Lego Star Wars stuff. You've not read a single comic book in your life.
I have too. You mailed me like 4 over the years, and I've read all 4 of them.
Your wife is like, you got to get this junk out of the house. So it all comes back to me.
No. I have them, and I am looking for. I think we're subscribers, right? We've got that. Rebel Force Radio has a subscription to that Marvel app that allows you to get access to, tens of thousands of issues of back comics. I think some of that classic Marvel stuff's in there, right?
Marvel Unlimited, and we have subscriptions that keep us up to date on all the latest weekly Star Wars Marvel releases. So I am caught up with everything up to this week. This week we had a Darth Maul comic released and the second issue of the Han Solo Imperial Cadet series released. I have not read either of those two. Obviously, the Darth Vader title is my favorite. I'm a little unimpressed with the Star Wars title, the one that features the Rebels, Luke, Han, Leia, and all.
This is the flagship title, right? I mean, this is
I find that a lot of the storytelling in those comics are a little uninspired. They just came off a really strong one, though. Which involved a lot of dogfights in space and whatnot, and now they're camping or something. I don't freaking know.
They're camping. Oh jeez. You know what? This is the right time to call. By the way, just a little bit of housekeeping. I want to give you an idea of our schedule here. We got the holidays coming up. We've got another show planned for you next week, and then we're going to take a little time off for the holidays. But if I know Jimmy Mack like I know Jimmy Mack, there's probably going to be a surprise or two dropping by across the podcast feed. So you don't want to stray too far away, right?
Maybe. And listen, if we've seen those rumors online about a Star Wars Episode 9 trailer potentially dropping around Christmas or before the year is over, we've heard nothing about it outside of the same rumors everyone else sees. So I would be surprised if a trailer does drop. But I know Collider has been reporting that a trailer will drop before Christmas. If that happens, we'll get together and we'll analyze that sucker frame by frame. But if Jason is right and that doesn't happen, next week we'll have one more show. And then we will be taking a break for the holidays. First time in 4 years. I know a lot of people are feeling an empty hole in their heart because there's not a Star Wars December film release this year. And I have to say I'm thankful for the break because you don't just go to see the movie once and do one podcast about it. You go to see the movie 500 times and do 500 podcasts about it. And that does cut into some of your holiday relaxation that I've been missing out on for like the last 4 years. So looking forward to getting a little downtime. But so we will be taking a break at the end of the month, essentially, is what I'm saying. I think we'll probably still be dropping stuff for our Patreon audience. Our Patreon subscribers have been getting all kind of great stuff lately, including Clone Wars Declassified remastered shows and all kind of good stuff.
Well, you've been dropping some of the holiday music. Yeah,
okay, so the holiday music, I did re-release the 3 Stocking Stuffers episodes, volumes 1 through 3. We relaunched those on the RSS feed and published them for the very first time ever to YouTube. So if YouTube is your way of getting Rebel Force Radio content, that's the place to go check out those great collections of Star Wars holiday music.
Excellent. Oh, by the way, before we kick off here officially, we do have a special guest here in the... Come on over. Okay. You've been waiting all night for this. In the Palatial Rebel Force Radio Studios, a special guest to say hello and happy holidays. Come on.
Happy holidays, happy holidays, happy holidays from the Swang family, and especially my dad.
All right. All right, that's my daughter, Bailey.
Well, Bailey has generated a little bit of a fan base herself lately with her preview of the Star Wars Adventures cartoons. And what do they call those? Galactic Adventures or whatever?
Galaxy of Adventure. I don't know. We watched a bunch of them over the weekend, last weekend. And she loves the artwork. We love all of us loved the visuals. It was just so fun to see that interpretation. I just wish they were a little bit longer and not so literal of a translation. Now, look, we know what they're there for. They're there to introduce younger kids to the saga films in a way. But I'm ready to see, them do like, I don't want to say infinities. That's not necessarily the idea, but maybe some stuff that we don't get to see, that other side of the camera that we talk about once in a while would be really fun,
But it's a cool, different take on the original trilogy, and I dig it. I like what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, you know what? I think this is a good as a time as ever is to open up the
let's do it.
Switchboard 1708-866-1RFR. That's 1737. So let's take our first call for the evening.
All right, we've got area code 813. Are you in 813? Hello, you're on with Rebel Force Radio.
Hey guys, it's Matthew Rooney from North Central Florida. How are you?
Matthew, thanks for joining us. Thanks for you were on hold for a while. We appreciate that.
Yeah, it's okay. No problem. I enjoyed it.
Happy holidays to you and yours.
Thanks to you guys, too.
What's on your mind tonight? What do you want to talk about? We've got so much. We've got, obviously, Episode 9 to talk about. We've got the Cassian Andor series. We've got The Mandalorian. We've got Resistance. If you're into that, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, there's so many things. Well, I think I talked to Jimmy on the Patreon show a while ago about Episode 9 and like what he'd like to see happen, and especially like the fate of Kylo Ren, because I had some of my own ideas as well, but maybe we could hear from Jason as well what you think or what you would like to see happen with Kylo Ren especially, but just with the movie in general as well.
Specifically with Kylo Ren, I don't really want to see him necessarily follow the same path as his grandfather. I would love to see a redemption of Kylo Ren, but I don't want to see him perish. I think that one of the kind of interesting what ifs in Star Wars is, what if Vader had lived and still turned to the light side? Some people have taken pretty humorous stabs at him showing up with Luke at the Endor party, sorry about all that, death and destruction I caused across the galaxy. But I would like to see that. Now, part of me thinks that that's probably not in the cards, because if Kylo Ren had a moment, from what we've seen so far, if he was to have a moment when he could have turned to the light, I think it would have been during the battle with Snoke and the Praetorian Guards and all of that in Episode 8. I feel like that would have been his moment, the climax of Episode 8. The fact that they didn't turn him then leads me to believe that that's not in his destiny, though I would like to see that. I just don't think that it's in the cards. It's hard for me to imagine a scenario where you see Episode 8, you go into Episode 9, and you have the redemption, and he survives. It's just, but I'm not J.J. Abrams either.
I like it. Now, there's one thing you neglected to mention is Reylo. And on Reylo.
You know me, I'm a hopeless romantic. And I love the whole concept of, forbidden love. I love those bad vampire human love stories. So the idea, which is really like Romeo and Juliet kind of stuff. Look, I love this idea of the light and the dark coming together to create something maybe better, stronger, interesting. Yeah, I would love that. I really would. I know that there's a lot of haters out there when it comes to the Reylo thing, and that's probably because maybe the shipping thing is a little, overdone, overplayed, gets kind of weird sometimes. But I'm for it. Actually, I really am. I'm for it. I actually think that Daisy Ridley, I think that she has. I think Kylo and Rey have amazing chemistry together. I really do. I think they have fantastic chemistry together on the screen.
What I like about the Reylo scenario is that it can bring Rey into the proper Skywalker family, and then it all just comes together so nicely. So what I would like to see with Kylo Ren is redemption, Reylo, and then sacrifice. Now, Jason, I like what you're saying, though. The whole what if Darth Vader survived the events of Return of the Jedi and really was able to live a life of redemption, as opposed to having one final redeeming moment right before he died. Mm-hmm. Which is just like, well, I guess we got to let him into the light side afterlife thing. Right. I mean, look, right there at the end. You think
it would be like a Lego show. I mean,
do you think Yoda and Ben talked about that? Oh, did you see that? He He threw Palpatine down that thing. Do you suppose we have to let him into this whole afterlife thing now? They've taken a vote. It's all right, let him in. And make him young, though. I don't want to look at that.
Well, yeah, then you got, right. Of course, then you got the Hayden Christensen thing going on and all of that.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah. It was pretty instantaneous, though. I mean, he showed up. There was a delay. If you notice, you watch the film, he does appear later. It's not like he appears with all of them. He kind of pops in. He's the last one to appear. Maybe that's for he had to make a dramatic entrance, of course.
Well, Ben and Yoda showed up first because they had already voted, and they knew what the outcome was going to be.
Yeah,
and Qui-Gon was there too, but just his voice.
Yeah,
and he wasn't saying anything. So,
well, what about you, Matt? I mean, you called in, and you talked to Jim. What is your hope for Episode 9, particularly as it relates to Kylo Ren and Rey? Do you see a romance there?
I don't see a romance between them, but I would like to see him continue on just because his character is so well developed and he's so interesting. It would really be a shame to lose him at the end of the films. What I had raised before that I think would be interesting, because I have also thought about, like, if they were going to redeem him, how could you do that? What I had talked about before was there was this old comic series called Tales of the Jedi, and the last story was called Redemption. And what happened was, it's about this Jedi named Ulet Keldroma, and he turns to the dark side. He kills his brother, and then at the climax of that series, this is a spoiler, so I'm sorry to people who haven't read it yet, but one of the other Jedi uses this strange Force ability on him that makes him lose his connection to the Force, so he can't use it anymore. And then in this later run called Redemption, he's sort of like a hermit. He has no connection to the Force. And then his that woman's daughter, who took his Force powers away, comes in and meets with him because she's having her own troubles, and he ends up redeeming himself by, giving her some new wisdom and then saving her from some situation. So it is a little bit far-fetched, I guess, thinking about it, and especially with the comics. I know Jason's not a huge fan, but in The Last Jedi, we already saw like a new, Force ability or thing with Luke projecting himself, and so I don't think it's necessarily out of the realm of possibilities that we could have Kylo Ren being cut off from the Force, and that's one way that you could, have him not die, and then you can save him for a future trilogy. And even though they say it's the end of the Skywalker saga, I really don't think that that's going to happen. I mean, I'm sure 10 or 20 years from now there will be an impetus for a new film, so then you still have them.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, Matt, because I 100% agree with you. I don't see how they can say goodbye completely to the Skywalker saga, the lineage. I just think it's too much of an integral part of Star Wars. I'm sorry. I mean, maybe I'm biased because that's what I've grown up with, but I just think that it is entirely too essential. Not that you can't tell great stories and you can deviate and you can go off in different directions, but there will always be a core segment of the fan base that's going to be saying, but what's going on? What's out there with the Skywalkers? Why can't we see more of this, more of that? So I don't think that they're going to turn their backs on. I think they're going to try. I think they're going to try because, look, I don't think they want to necessarily deal with all of the complications of telling stories in that within that family and within the all of the those timelines and all of that. But I think they're going to find that that's really where the true box office is and the interest is with those characters. Now you could say, well, what about Rogue One? Okay, all right, fair point. My take on Rogue One was that the word of mouth on it was absolutely off the charts great. I think that's what really, really helped propel Rogue One. Jim and I were at the premiere, walked out of the premiere, and everybody was buzzing. And it wasn't wasn't the Last Jedi kind of buzz. It was a different kind of buzz. I mean, people were just really turned on by the possibilities of what could happen with these kind of filler. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but these filler movies. So who knows? Who knows? But the fact is, Rogue One was tied, not necessarily in terms of character outside of, there was no Luke, Han, you got a little bit of Leia in there, you didn't have the droids, but you did have Vader, and word spread very quickly about that Vader moment, and that was also a last-minute addition. Also, word spread very quickly about the groundbreaking use of a CGI Peter Cushing. So there was so much, I think, kind of bottled up energy that just exploded when that film came out. Also, got to tip my hat to Lucasfilm PR and Disney PR. I think they executed that campaign flawlessly. I think they really did a great job promoting that movie, getting the word out, and
inviting us to the press.
Well, I don't want to say that we had anything to do with it, but But anyway, well, Matt, thank you so much for the call. Thank you for your patience. Appreciate it very, very much. We do want to get onto someone else here. Let's see who's our next caller. We've got area code 289. Area code 289. You're on with Rebel Force Radio. Hello, hello.
Yep. Hello. How are you?
Good. Who's this?
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Chase.
This is Chase, not the Chase.
Yeah, that's Chase Norton.
Chase Norton, the spawn of Sheldon Norton.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Absolutely.
All right.
Good.
So Chase is, you probably are on the younger end of the spectrum as far as people who listen to Rebel Force Radio. How old are you nowadays? Are you 20 yet?
I'm 18.
Oh, okay, good.
18, yeah.
So good. So we're still hearing from the teens. And, of course, Mike, he's 19, so I hear enough from the teens in my day-to-day routine. But so what's on your mind? What do you want to call and chat with us about?
Well, I've really been in a Phantom Menace mood these past couple weeks.
All right.
And especially with the release of the Qui-Gon and Darth Maul comic last week and this week, I've just been really digging the exploration of the prequels. I'm really excited for the future Age of the Republic comics. I know in a couple of weeks we're getting the Obi-Wan one set during Attack of the Clones. And so just exploring the Force and what it means to be a Jedi and like how Qui-Gon fits into that. So
yeah,
that's what I've been thinking about.
Now, I haven't read the Darth Maul issue. I just picked that up today. But I did read the Qui-Gon. And while I don't have it in front of me, I don't see it. But I'll punch it up here. They do talk a little bit about light side, dark side, and the balance of the Force in the final panels of that comic. And I thought it was really revealing, and it kind of it adds on to our conversation from last week where we were really trying to define balance.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's one thing I want to clear up with some people because, we talk a lot on the show and sometimes it goes off into different directions and tangents of things. And we're not working with a script or anything. So there are sometimes things that we fail to get across. And when you're talking about balance of the Force, that's a really difficult subject matter. Like when we played the George Lucas clips, some people were interpreting our analysis of that by saying there is no bad, there is no evil in the galaxy, like as if those emotions or concepts do not exist, that part of human nature doesn't exist. That's not what I'm saying. I think it's all, you're looking at it from the Jedi perspective and how the Force is being used by people who know how to use it. And if people are strong in the Force and they understand how to use it, and they start using things like fear, aggression, anger to tap into the Force, it does tip the scales. The Force is in balance. It doesn't mean there's no hatred, there's no anger, there's no fear or aggression that exists in the galaxy. That's just a very natural thing. It's more that Force users who are trained in how to use the Force, they will notice a change in things if people are using the Force for aggressive natures because it all connects to the Jedi. And it's all very Jedi specific. Don't you think, Chase? Or where do you weigh in on balance of the Force?
Yeah, I agree. And something I really liked about that Qui-Gon comic was him separating himself as a peacekeeper and his disagreements with Yoda. And of course we see that in The Phantom Menace, but that's always an idea I've really liked to explore and I want them to explore more, is just idea of kind of the flaws with the Jedi in The Phantom Menace and why they may not be truly representing that balance or representing it wrong. Well, with Qui-Gon, he's kind of that, he is really that peacekeeper. And I love in that comic, he's saving that girl, but not because of he thinks that's right, but it's just the right thing to do. And after I read that comic, I rewatched Phantom Menace, and it was really fun watching Qui-Gon's actions with that in mind. Not to get too political or anything, but like he's sort of the person who believes in God or a higher power, but not the religion so much. And I find that really attractive about Qui-Gon's character and his view on the balance of the Force, right? Like when he finds Anakin in Phantom Menace, he's so attached to that because that he truly believes in the idea of the chosen one or someone who will bring balance, because for him, he doesn't quite see that with the Jedi Order in Phantom Menace, right? So.
Right, and we know, I mean, Yoda's own words says to Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon's defiance I sense in you. Need that you do not. You also hear Obi-Wan talking about, you know, if Qui-Gon just mind his P's and Q's a little bit more, he'd be on the council. So we know that Qui-Gon was a rebel, and we see some of the rebellious things that he does in the Phantom Menace by picking up Jar Jar and taking him with him, by picking up Anakin. You know, so I'm with you, Chase. I've always been fascinated by Qui-Gon. I love that he is not. He's a Jedi, but he is not. He's not too bogged down in doctrine. You can tell that it's almost like the difference between the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. You know, he's about the spirit of the law, and Yoda, and I think who typifies it more than anybody is Mace Windu, one of my least favorite Jedi. Sorry, everybody that loves Mace Windu. But I think he's so by the book. He's so by the book, and you know, it clearly doesn't. I don't think he really inspires at all. Yoda, I think, you know, we get to see the playful, more fun side of Yoda in the sequel, or in the original trilogy, as opposed to the prequel. So I feel like there's growth there with him as well. And he says at the end of episode 3, you know, he's going to become essentially Qui-Gon's student.
Yes, and I love that relationship between Qui-Gon and Yoda. And for me, Last Jedi really, after really thinking about the Jedi and the mistakes they made throughout the prequels, I always kind of had a bad taste in my mouth, I guess, about Yoda, because I was like, well, he made a bunch of big mistakes, right, in terms of Anakin and how he dealt with things. He was a lot more like Windu than he was Qui-Gon. And that scene in The Last Jedi, for me, really redeemed him as a true Jedi, or the good. He tells Luke this important lesson about the master thing or whatever, but also like burning the books and the evolution of the Force, and that started with Qui-Gon. And so the whole thing, The Last Jedi, like really my favorite scene by far is that Yoda scene, because I think it really wraps up some of the issues I had with me wanting to view Yoda as a true hero. For me, he finally reaches that point in The Last Jedi, and I hope we get to see a little bit more of him in Episode 9, and hopefully Qui-Gon. That'd be crazy, but I don't know.
No, I don't think that's crazy at all. Let me ask you a question. Chase, you said Yoda made a lot of mistakes with Anakin. Can you define any of those mistakes, or are you just talking about allowing him to proceed with his Jedi training? Where did Yoda make the biggest mistake with Anakin?
I think one of the biggest mistakes was in the season 5 of Clone Wars, Yoda sees that vision, right? And then, and correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't watched in a while, but he sees the dangerous path of Anakin really explicitly shown to him. And then when he comes, that's before Revenge of the Sith, and he does nothing about that. And I think he allowed Anakin to be trained in more of like thinking about Qui-Gon and some respect for Qui-Gon, rather than truly believing or just misreading the prophecy. I'm not exactly sure, but
but you also did mention that Qui-Gon sort of answered to a higher source than your typical Jedi. So wasn't there some wisdom
I think
Yoda allowing Anakin to be trained? It was more than just out of loyalty to a fallen comrade. He was sensing that Qui-Gon was onto something here.
I just think Yoda was less concerned with Anakin. Like, if Qui-Gon was in power, right? Like, I think a lot more of the focus would be on raising Anakin to be that true hero, right? But or the chosen one. But with Yoda, there's more of a focus on, the war itself, and you can't really blame him, but also the politics of the Jedi spying on the Chancellor and things like that. I just think he just says some wrong things. I don't know. I think he pushes Anakin in the wrong direction.
I completely agree. I think the I just want to jump on that real quick. I think the manipulation that they deploy on Anakin with having him spying on the Chancellor, every time I see that, it makes me sick. It is really kind of a deplorable thing that they have him do. I don't know who they're trying to set up more. They trying to set up Anakin? If you've got somebody who is that vulnerable and you're going to throw him into the lion's den, knowing what his potential is,
it's pure exploitation is what they're doing.
Absolutely it is. They're using him.
Yeah.
And you said Yoda says a lot of wrong things. Can we attribute that to his age, where he just, oh, there's Yoda. He's always politically correct.
Crazy old.
He's like,
I don't
900 years old, you get away with everything, you will.
Right.
Go on, Chase. So you have a few more things to say about this.
Just to jump off Jason's point, when Anakin cuts, when he takes down Mace or disarms him, and the Emperor eventually kills him, and sometimes when I watch that, I agree with him, right? If you think about the ways they pushed him with the manipulation, it's like Windu in many ways is a villain there too. Not as villainous as the Emperor, but when he says he's too dangerous to be left alive, right? That's whoa. And
well, he may have had a point.
A reflection of what
he may have had a point. If we look at what would have happened, he could have really nipped things in the bud there.
Right. I just the way he approached it, and especially, I guess using Anakin to get there. That's a good point.
Yeah,
it was pretty bad.
he was a pretty rough guy, but one of the things that I don't think that George talks about it in interviews, but one of the things I don't think he delivered or hit home enough in the film itself, because you go to the prequel films, and particularly Episode 1 and even Episode 2. And the Jedi are clearly, the white hats, and you got the Sith that are the black hats, and but there's enough dialogue that you realize that the Jedi aren't as pure as the wind-driven snow. But I think that George might have been able to play that up a little bit more. Definitely, there's some subtext. There's definitely subtext, and he definitely talks about it very openly in interviews and when he talks about the films. But I feel like it was maybe just a little bit too subtle. He's really talking about, essentially a Justice League that is having a lot of trouble on their within their ranks. And I really feel that he could have maybe delivered a little bit more on that because it is one of the more compelling parts of it.
you would have liked to see the Jedi be represented more as heroes in Revenge of the Sith, per se, right? Like,
well, no,
we're having
actually,
about the gray area, but
actually, kind of the opposite. Like, I feel like that. You go into the films thinking and assuming that the Jedi are the heroes, but there are these little drips and drops of subtext that you understand that they're not as perfect, and they're not Superman as you kind of thought they were. I just think George could have played that up a little bit more, because it's almost too subtle. And unless you're like a nerd on a podcast talking about it, I don't think the average moviegoer realizes it.
No, for sure. I've had that conversations with people who aren't as hardcore as hardcore as us, and they don't realize that. They don't see that. I definitely agree. I think it's, like you said, one of the most interesting parts of the prequel trilogy, and really makes it something I'm able to watch over and over again.
Yes.
Right? So,
I feel bad for people that just watch it on the surface. I can understand those that watch it and go, oh, this isn't all that great. But if you do kind of, if you're steeped in this stuff,
so much to delve into.
There's a lot to delve into.
And there's a lot of people on hold too, Chase.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have to cut it off with you now. But thank you so much for calling.
Thank you very much.
Give our best to your dad and tell him to start prepping that director's cut of When the Galaxy Listens. Now. We need to release that. So.
All right. Well, Chase is one of my favorite text buddies. We're always texting back and forth about our action figure finds. And Chase, I'm looking at my Zuckus 6-inch Black Series right now that I was lucky enough to get. But we'll chat later. All right, man.
All right. See you.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Bye, Chase.
All right, Chase Norton, one of the good ones there. Now we're going to area code 219. Hello, 219. Thank you for your patience. You're on with Rebel Force Radio. Happy holidays to you.
Hey, happy holidays, Jason and Jimmy. How you guys doing?
Hey, great. Who are we talking to?
This is Jaron from Northwest Indiana.
Jeremy from Indiana. Welcome. Thanks for staying up with us.
Jaron, actually.
Oh, Jaron. Oh, I'm sorry. Jaron.
Sorry.
Cool name, man. Jaron. All right. Good to talk to you.
Sir. Yeah, I just had an interesting topic just to run past you guys.
Please.
With episode 9 being the last installment in the quote-unquote Skywalker legacy, how do you guys see the future of Star Wars progressing? I mean, Marvel has established characters. Star Wars after episode 9, we're going to be walking into uncharted territory, basically. New characters, new storylines. I'm just curious, does it concern you? Does it excite you? What are your thoughts?
Jim, why don't you start with this? Do you have some thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. Well, obviously we had a sense of where things were going up until last summer. We were assuming we would be getting saga films every other year with Star Wars story films filling in the gaps. And the films that we were hearing that could be released or in development was the Obi-Wan film, a Boba Fett film. We've heard rumors about a bounty hunter movie or a Jabba the Hutt movie, or even a Yoda movie. And of course, I think they can just print their own money if they start making Darth Vader movies. And I'm talking about Darth Vader in his prime during the dark years between the prequel and the original trilogy, where Vader is out hunting Jedi. I think that is some really prime material there. And you could get really down and dirty with a film like that and not worry about so much the character of Darth Vader more than just like the ominous presence of Darth Vader, I know you could get in territory where you might like turn him into a Michael Myers or a Jason from Friday the 13th. I'm not saying go in that direction fully. Obviously, you'd have to have those character moments, but they proved that they could execute things like that in Vader's appearances in Rogue One, which everyone loved. I can't think of a moment in the Disney era of Star Wars films that is more universally loved than Darth Vader's appearance at the end of Rogue One. People, no matter who you are, no matter what level of your Star Wars fandom you might ascribe to, you stop what you're doing if that thing happens to be on a screen near you. You stop what you're doing and you watch it because it's unbelievable. And I think that just with that sort of vibe, you can actually formulate a whole film around that. But the Solo thing and the poor box office of it and the fact that it was a flawed production and a rush job, I believe, that changed the perspective of things and the direction in which things are going. And we've heard Bob Iger say that there's going to be a slowdown in Star Wars film releases. And I strongly believe that he is speaking the truth. I think we'll see at least 2 to 3 years between episode 9 and the release of the next Star Wars film, which will come from the Game of Thrones creators or the production staff, whatever they are. It's going to be coming from those guys, Benioff and Weiss, and they are going to launch off the next era of Star Wars films. And I think the future for things like a Boba Fett story, an Obi-Wan story, bounty hunters, Jabba the Hutt, Yoda, or even Darth Vader himself, I think that stuff might even be better suited for the streaming platform. Make a series, a season-long series about these concepts. And really, like with The Mandalorian, we'll see how The Mandalorian goes. But I imagine that all things are on hold cinematically until the Benioff-Weiss production is ready for release. And that is not something that's going to be rushed into production. And that's the only thing I think is going to be grinding the gears cinematically at Lucasfilm for the next number of years. I think more of the priority is going to be on these streaming series. I think there's less risk. I think there's more potential. So just common sense leads me to believe that. And we'll see where that goes. Other things like we've heard about Rian Johnson's trilogy. Well, maybe somehow they'll bring him in and put him in charge of a season of the streaming series or give him his own streaming series, what have you. He's no stranger to television, working on Breaking Bad and stuff like that. So that's where I think the future is going to be as far as film releases go. I think after episode 9, you're going to get a little cool down. And I think then maybe 10 years down the road, you could see a reunion of Finn, Poe, and Rey and put them off on their own adventure. I think that would be pretty cool. So that's how I would strategize it. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I was just, kicking around in my head. I'm a little concerned with the introduction of new characters, new storylines, how Disney will actually execute on a new trilogy featuring said new characters and new storylines. As Star Wars fans, we kind of tend to hold on to, the original trilogy characters. Obviously, that's what created Star Wars and made it what it is today. But I'm a little concerned as to how Disney is going to execute the next generation of Star Wars. Any thoughts on that?
It's down to the Benioff-Weiss creation. I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing that they're banking big money on. And maybe it will put Star Wars into an entirely different era. Make it more like a fantasy thing like Game of Thrones. I don't know if they'd want to do that, the Star Wars version of Game of Thrones, but there might be just some natural things that happen in Game of Thrones that could influence the way things happen in future Star Wars. I don't know.
I have to say, I think it's a big miscalculation to overplay the comparisons of the Star Wars universe with an established, comic verse to the size and the scale and the scope of a Marvel or a DC. The fact is that if you've been following the DC universe or the Marvel universe for the past 40 years, like we've been with Star Wars, and those characters go back, Superman's 80 years old now? something like that, 90 years old. You are used to various interpretations. Take the character of Batman. You've got people that love and adore the Adam West series still, and that's their Batman. Take a look, or maybe they think the Michael Keaton 80s era is the best, or the Chris Nolan films, or like me, Batman the Animated Series. So you're used to interpretations and different takes, different versions. We don't feel that way about Star Wars characters. It's not there. I don't want to say it's not old enough yet, but it hasn't been explored and interpreted and reinterpreted like these comic book characters. So to think that we can, blow up the universe and look in all the nooks and crannies and people are just going to, lap it up because it's got a Star Wars logo on it, I do think that that's a miscalculation. I do think that you need things that bring you back to the core, the nucleus of what makes Star Wars Star Wars. And frankly, I don't think it's the ships. I don't think it's the technology. I think it is the characters. And you could say that the Force is a character. I think you've got to have some of these things. We'll see what happens with The Mandalorian. It may be a great show. I hope that it is a great show. I can't wait to see it. But there's got to be things, and over time you'll see it. If this show goes a whole season without any tie back to core saga characters, people are going to get bored with it, because that is going to be the expectation. Whether people walk in and they admit it or not, they're going to expect, if they see Mandalorian, they're going to say, well, where's Boba Fett? They are. I'm talking about the mainstream fans out there that are tuning in every week to see a Star Wars TV series. They want to see that.
He'd be dead. He'd be in the Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, so we think.
Why would anyone ask that?
We'll see.
Say, where's Boba Fett? No, who's going to say that?
A lot of people. A lot of people. I'm not talking about those necessarily listening to this show. I'm talking about the hundreds of thousands and millions of people that they're going to rely on to make that show a success. That's what I'm talking about.
Hundreds of thousands of millions of people. That's a tall order right there. But
how do you think that Netflix is going to have a successful series unless they get millions of streams? You think they're going to get millions of streams just preaching to the choir, people that listen to this show? And
what is a common network? Like, what is a common stream for a very popular Netflix show? Is it like House of Cards? Does that get?
It's in the millions.
It's in the millions?
Of course it is.
Well, I guess it would be. A lot of people subscribe to
It's
Netflix.
in the millions. Yeah.
Wow.
Jaron, are you still listening?
It's not hundreds.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Uh-huh.
Hundreds
I'm
of thousands. Well, Jaron, thank you so much for giving us a call. We're going to jump on to another caller, so be sure to call back sometime. We plan on doing these more often. They are a lot of fun.
They sure are. All right, let's see. Who's been listening or waiting the longest here? We've got area code 605. Let's see what 605 has got to say.
We've been doing these more often. They are.
Hey, 605, what's going on? Who's this?
We're waiting the longest.
Oh,
hey, guys, it's Rich Brendel.
Hey, Rich.
How's it going, buddy? So glad you called.
Finally, you guys can hear me this time.
You know, you were our very first caller on our last live show. And when you said your name, it completely dropped out. And so, yeah, Rich from Wisconsin. Of course, we know Rich. Rich hung with us for The Last Jedi. That was a year ago. This week. I mean, Swank, you were out here a year ago today. Oh, by the way, I do have to say, we're recording this on Thursday night, December 13th. And I have to say happy birthday to Dylan Mack. Dylan Dog. Dylan McInerney is 16 years old.
Wow.
16 years old. Jason, do you have the classic clip of him playing with the Jawa sandcrawler?
I think by the time they listen to the delayed podcast, we'll have that. I don't have it right in front of me.
I want to hear it because today
rolling over the Ewoks.
Yeah, you remember. So yeah, Rich. Oh man,
yeah.
We started this show when Dylan was 4 years old. That's unbelievable.
Wow.
By the way, I want to throw in here, I just did a little quick research, and Jim, you brought up Game of Thrones, and you're like, well, what is a big rating for a Netflix show? And so
this is HBO too, by the way, Game of Thrones.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Game of Thrones. Excuse me. You said House of Cards. Pardon me. Yeah. House of Cards. So the House of Cards season 6 premiere had a significant drop. Of course, Kevin Spacey, a lot of what do you call that? Scandal. Okay, Kevin Spacey scandal. Right. So he wasn't able to jump in with season 6, so they were down. There was an average minute audience of 2.9 million U.S. viewers compared with 4.4 million for season 5's first episode back in May 2017. So, that's one of their most successful shows. So somewhere in the neighborhood of, between probably 3 and 5 million is considered, and that's the average minute audience. So that's pretty significant. These streaming numbers, this is a different ball game than, traditional broadcast ratings. So when I know that at the time of The Mandalorian that Boba Fett is supposedly, dead and buried and digested. Of course, I'm just talking about the average person out there tuning in to watch a show. And I just threw Boba Fett out there. I think that that people will tire of Star Wars that doesn't tie it back to some sort of core character or concept from the films. Rich, maybe you feel differently.
What if there's no Star Wars in the title? They've only revealed that the name of the series is going to be called The Mandalorian.
They can call it whatever they want. Everyone's going to know. People aren't going to tune in to something called The Mandalorian unless they realize what it is. They're not going to just say, well, that sounds interesting. They're going to tune in because they know that it's Star Wars. They have to know it's Star Wars first. But, Jim, you do raise a great point. This thing is not called Star Wars The Mandalorian or The Mandalorian, a Star Wars television series. It's just called The Mandalorian.
Right. So, and I think you do come in with a little bit of an education. I think even the producers and distributors of the show understand that you're coming in with a bit of an education just by calling it The Mandalorian. It's not common knowledge that Boba Fett was a Mandalorian amongst those average run-of-the-mill man-on-the-street Star Wars fans that you're talking about. Obviously, anyone listening to this show, they know all the ins and outs of Star Wars. So we know, and that's what they're counting on. That's what they want to bring in, and then other people will just watch it and be like, oh yeah, this is like Star Wars. And of course, all the marketing will tie it into Star Wars, all the interviews on TV, all the articles and periodicals and online, all of that stuff will point it back to Star Wars. So if you're going to hear about it, you're going to hear about the new Star Wars show, but it won't necessarily say that in the title. And I think they are trying to bring in your more educated fan, not necessarily the hardest of hardcore fan, but an educated Star Wars fan who
they're going to have to. They're going to have to.
And there'll be something in the description at the very beginning.
Yeah. Rich, what are your thoughts on all this, or did you have something completely different to bring up?
I got other stuff that I can bring up too, but I'll give my 2 cents on this. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of the people are going to think that. A lot of the mediocre fans, they're going to probably think. They might even think through the whole time that that's Boba Fett out there, The
media. Yeah. Rich calls them mediocre fans.
People are going to. Yeah.
Can't you just imagine being at your water cooler at work? Yeah, Rich, you took the words right out of my mouth. You're around the water cooler at work, and people go, yeah, I watched that Boba Fett show the other night. That's something else, So I think that's probably going to happen. They're also the people that call it Star Trek, by the way.
Yeah.
Star Trek.
That's my favorite.
But so what's on your mind tonight, my friend? Happy holidays, by the way.
Yeah, happy holidays to you too. I mean, it stinks not having Star Wars this year, but hey, it's great to hang out with you guys tonight. I mean, that's one thing that was a highlight last year with The Last Jedi is hanging out with you guys. So it's good to have this tonight at least. So that's very cool. So going back to the balance of the Force, I know this is an area that Jimmy Mack said that Jimmy, you said that you were starting to get tired of hearing about, but it's been about a year. But
I didn't say I was tired.
Oh wait, I think he's going to bring up the M word. Yes, there it is.
I did go through a little bit of Mortis burnout. I did, but I've come to terms with it recently. But so what do you have to say about Mortis?
Well, I mean, Mortis. I mean, with the Mortis trilogy, the whole thing about that was the beings on that, like the son and the daughter. They were the ones that brought balance to the Force, and they were counting on Anakin to stay there so that he could bring balance to the Force and keep balance there. So honestly, I mean, I don't think balance really is ever going to happen until somebody actually goes back to Mortis. Whether, I had some theories at one time that Ahsoka was going to go back there, but I don't know. That didn't happen. But, until a Jedi, until something gets restored on Mortis, because everybody was killed there, I don't think that balance can really happen.
I don't think Mortis is an actual physical place. I think that is just a thing that the Force is using to connect with people. It's a vision that gets presented to only a chosen few. And they go to Mortis, and maybe they could bring in people close to them, to the same place. But I don't think they actually physically go there. I think the whole Mortis thing, it's all a metaphorical thing. It's a lesson being taught through the Force to Anakin specifically to maintain that balance in himself, because he is the thing that's holding it all together. And it's true, because once Anakin fully commits to the dark side of the Force, the galaxy falls into ruin and darkness prevails. Mm-hmm. So I think that was it was more or less a vision. I don't think Mortis is a real place. I think that is the Force communicating directly with the Jedi. I do. And it's a vision that has appeared to others too, because we see in Rebels, there is this mosaic that, represents the father, son, and daughter. So it's a thing that happens. It's kind of like when people talk about dying, and then being brought back to life. And they say, I went down this tunnel of bright light and all of the, it's not an uncommon thing. People, more than one person has said that. And so, that's kind of how I look at the Mortis thing. If you're thinking about a Jedi, is that it's a vision that could be presented to a certain Force user. And the hard thing to explain is Ahsoka and Obi-Wan going along for the ride.
Yeah.
That could be part of the lesson, though, that it needs to be taught in the metaphysical realm and in the realm of reality.
I 100% agree. I don't think you can take it literally. Yeah. Oh, the bird.
I don't think you should take it literally. I don't think it's a place that they can, fly their Jedi starfighter into a hyperspace ring and then go to Mortis. They can, it doesn't get presented that way. But it is a vision that the Force can present to more than one person, obviously.
Yeah, it's kind of like a whole different realm kind of thing that you can't tangibly get to through a starship, but and you kind of have to be chosen to get there. But there's physical aspects of it, like with the owl. I mean, we saw the owl also on in those that little time portal thing that Ezra went to, didn't we?
Can I just let me just throw something. Let's put this back in the real universe for a second. I don't mean this to sound disrespectful to anybody, but I just want to say or throw out a question here. Does anybody really believe that the Lucasfilm of today is even remotely interested in taking Star Wars as deep as what was happening with Mortis and the Clone Wars? I just don't think that there is any desire upon Lucasfilm leadership to go that deep.
I don't know, because that's where a lot of the bread and butter is, as far as.
Well, you and I both know that, but I don't know that everybody else knows that.
You know, unlike what you said earlier, I think, you know, things like the starships and the tech, that's all very important in Star Wars. That's what makes it incredible. The dog fights, the pod races, the blaster fights, all of that stuff. It's awesome. But also, very importantly, are the characters and the spiritual. And all of that together was just presented so beautifully and well balanced and universally loved by George Lucas when he was presenting these stories. And so, you know, that's what I think you need, is just that proper balance. If you go too heavy into characters, you're going in the wrong direction. If you go too heavily into tech and explosions and battles, you're going in the wrong direction. You have to find, you know, balance in the Force. You have to find this balance where it is equal parts characters, equal parts special effects, and shock and awe and amazing stuff. And then you have to put it all together with an incredible plot, with amazing twists and turns that as an audience you can't see. This is a tall order. But I think all of these little things need to be looked at closely when creating a Star Wars film. I think those are the three things: character, spirituality, and special effects. You know, awesome. You know, just awesome. And then you can get nitpicky about things like, well, the Battle Line Crate compared to the Battle Line Hoth. I see A, B, and C in this. And then you can really start picking it apart. That's fine. I'm fine with that. But those attempts need to be made. So have you seen those attempts being made in all 8 of the Star Wars films? Heavy character stuff, heavy special effects and action, and heavy technology and wait, what am I skipping? Oh, spirituality. Those are the things you need to see in the Star Wars films. So maybe that's why Solo fell a little flat, is because for the most part they dodged the spirituality part.
See, I don't think so. I don't think Solo fell flat on its own merits. Solo fell flat because it was too much too soon, and half the fan base really hated the last movie. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
Harrison Ford was just killed off 2.5 years ago. It's just, you know, that's why I couldn't understand why rush into that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're probably like, okay, well, we want to show the fans that just because Harrison Ford's, you know, Han Solo died doesn't mean that we've totally given up on Han Solo. See, fans, he's still alive. He's still alive. We can have Han Solo. You can have Han Solo. I think that's what a lot of that was about. And I you know, Jim, you mentioned it on the show, and I was actually listening back to last week's show, and I gave an audible, you know, driving to work, gave an audible, yeah, when you said, you know, I would love to be getting ready to go to the theaters to see Solo right now. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I would too. I think it'd be amazing to take, you know, a trip in the Wayback Machine and change history and have Solo coming out right now. I think it would be a much different story than when it came out in May. Much different story.
And it might have had a more unifying effect on people who were polarized by The Last Jedi.
Agreed. Hey, Rich, you're a great friend. Thank you so much for hanging with us. We couldn't do a live show without you.
Problem.
We appreciate it very, very much. Any parting words here as we hang up on you here on the holiday edition of Rebel Force Radio?
Well, I agree there are missing elements in the sequel trilogy, and since Disney took over, there are missing elements there. I kind of look at it kind of like the Muppets. I'm a huge Muppets fan, and there is a huge difference between like the Jim Henson Muppets and after he passed away. Yep. And for years and years, the Muppet movies, they just weren't the same at all.
No.
And then
I'm pretty casual about that stuff. I like to take my kids to see the Muppets and everything. I never understood really like no knock on you. It's because I know like Chris Mocht is a hardcore Muppet fan, and Big Steve Glosson, big Muppet fan. But you know, in my adulthood, I don't give a crap about the Muppets at all, as far as like a hardcore fan would. But when I see those movies, when I see those movies, I know something is missing from the formula, big time.
Yeah.
But then they nailed it with that one when they resurrected them with the Muppets, like 5 or 6 years ago. They nailed it with that, and they captured the original feeling. And so that was, that kind of should give us hope as Star Wars fans.
Was that the one that had Manny from Modern Family in it? Remember it had Manny from Modern Family? He made a cameo.
Had him for like one little scene in it.
Is that the one? That was pretty cool. Hey, you know what? We're grown men here talking about Star Wars, so I don't mean to, like, I hope I didn't come off as rude by saying.
That was just a comparison between that, so, but,
and that's a good comparison too, yeah. So
yeah, well, Disney was Disney handles the Muppet IP as well, and I've always felt that they didn't quite know what to do with them. But if you just follow Frank Oz on Twitter, and you'll see every once in a while someone will say, "Well, why don't you do Fozzie Bear anymore? Why don't you do Grover anymore?" And he just says basically, "They don't call me." So there you go.
Well, they probably did call him at one time, and he asked for several Brinks trucks to pull up in his driveway, and they're like, "Oh, we got a guy here who sounds just like you." So
I don't know.
See you later, Frank.
Thing.
He priced himself out. That's what happens. Hey, that's when you know you're a legend.
We'll see.
That's when you know you're a legend. Is they can no longer afford you for the things that made you a legend in the first place. So that's how you know you've made it. But hey, Rich.
All right. Rich, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it very much.
Jason, remember when we went to the Jim Henson Studios in Hollywood?
We did. And it wasn't, I remember the hype of going out there. And I also remember being a little bit let down. I kind of expected, Kermit and Miss Piggy to greet you as you were getting off the bus. But yeah, there was that was Star Wars Celebration 4 out in L.A.
Yes, 2007.
And there was a sideshow collective. No, it wasn't
Master Replicas.
Sideshow?
Master
Replicas, who's no longer around. Master Replicas was having a big party, a big bash, and they invited a bunch of us out to Jim Henson Studios. And that was actually the most of LA that I saw, because we took the bus.
Yeah.
It was one of those big double-decker buses, and we were on the top. Yeah. From downtown out
Hollywood.
to Henson Studios, which was like what, in Hollywood or Burbank?
Yeah, it's in Hollywood.
But it was, it was amazing to be there, and all that history. But Jim Henson, I just feel that was lightning in a bottle. He was. I don't know. It's hard to describe. Jim, you talk about yourself being a very, very casual Muppet fan. I can't say that I'm one of those with an encyclopedic knowledge of the Muppets, but I'm probably maybe a little bit more sentimental about them than you are. And it really wasn't the same. I just think that there was a balance between family friendly and also cheeky humor that Jim Henson and his original crew there were able to meet, so that the Muppet movie, the Great Muppet Caper, even A Muppet Christmas Carol, I think the Christmas Carol might have been the last one that Jim Henson was at least involved in initially. That there's something that's very, very different. It loses its thing. So here's the thing. I think that what I hope that Disney does is I hope that they don't lose that connection between Star Wars, the IP, and the creator, George Lucas. And when I hear about guys like Dave Filoni being more and more involved, we know Dave Filoni's directing at least one episode, maybe more, of The Mandalorian. He's one of the producers.
And he's executive producer.
Right. That bodes well. Dave learned at the knee of the creator. Dave learned how to I mean, I think we have an interview with Dave Filoni where he's talking about George saying, hey, I'm teaching you how to do this stuff. I'm teaching you how to do Star Wars. And, so that's very, very encouraging. And I think that they've learned that it's not as easy as maybe they thought. I'm not suggesting that they thought it was going to be a breeze, but I think they've learned some lessons along the way.
George is, I think he does hold on to that secret sauce recipe that he has. I think he's holding on to that pretty tightly. By the way, I do want to give a shout out to Kermit the Frog, or is it Kemet? Is it Kermit? Yeah, it is Kermit. Kermit the Frog, who says hi ho in the chat, and missing some love. So, I love the Muppets, Kermit the Frog. One of my all-time favorite Mark Hamill appearances is on that Muppet show back in, 1978, 79, when it was the first time we ever saw him in Bespin fatigues. That's the first canonical appearance of Luke Skywalker in Bespin.
Is that right? That was the first time we saw that. Because doesn't, I think that... who is it? Is it Gonzo that says, I love your tailor? Or something like that.
They all say
that episode.
Too. It's a running gag. They all say that. Too.
Yeah. They love all the content.
Who's your tailor?
Let's grab another caller. This is area code 270. 270, you're on with Rebel Force Radio. Happy holidays. Hello.
Hey, nice to talk to you guys.
Who's this?
Hello. This is Adam from Kentucky.
Adam from Kentucky. Welcome.
I was thinking about what you guys said a few shows back about the sequel trilogy feeling like a spinoff of sorts instead of a continuation.
Well, I don't know that we definitively said what it was, but we did raise the question about. We threw that out there. Is the sequel trilogy more of a spinoff than it is a continuation? What are your thoughts?
Well, I started thinking about this, and I posted something on the RFR group. Mm-hmm. I kind of developed a theory about that would connect the entire saga together and make the sequel trilogy feel essential, like feels like a direct continuation. Pretty much, I think that Snoke is Plagueis. I buy into that theory, and I think he created Anakin to destroy the Jedi. And I think that fooled Qui-Gon into thinking he was the chosen one. And so by the time we get to Luke and, he promises to carry on what he's learned, things don't go well for him because the Force never was balanced. And as a result, Kylo Ren is able to rise to power. And I believe the Force created Rey. The Force awoke, and she is the real chosen one. And that explains why she's so powerful, and she will rebuild the Jedi. That's my theory.
All right. Well, the thing with and I'm not denying the dramatic quality of what you just said, and it's kind of interesting, but doesn't that really negate episodes 1 through 6 and hijack the saga from George Lucas's grasp completely and fully and essentially reboot it? I mean, doesn't it do that? I mean, It's completely taking how many lines of dialogue from 6 previous films by the guy who created the whole thing and taking all those lines of dialogue and throwing them out the window and say, no, this is what Star Wars has always been about. That is a very bold move. And I would imagine that the fan response to something like that would be off the charts. So thank you for bringing it up, though, because throwing that out there prepares me for something like that actually happening. I just think that's a slap in the face of George Lucas and all he's done to create the saga and build an industry around it independently. I think that, you know, he is a true Hollywood Hall of Famer. If ever such a thing would exist, George Lucas would have to be in the induction class, the original class. And I cannot imagine them taking those sort of liberties. It'd just be deliberately screwing with everything that's been placed in front of it. I mean, to end it all on that, to conclude it all on that, I think would be terrible. And it would give a lot of reality to the complaints that people have been making about George Lucas, including myself, about George Lucas being cast aside as the final trilogy to his saga was in production. It just would, I think that would be devastating. Now, dramatically, I think that's wow, holy smokes. But it does negate everything. It taints.
Well, Jimmy, the word
78.
I think the word that you use that most describes it best is a hijacking. It would take
great liberties to conclude the saga on something like that.
Yeah. Hey, don't mind this 40 years of history. We're going to come in and tell you who the real chosen one is, and it's this character that we created in a hot second. I mean, no disrespect to Rey, but I think that there's probably a more elegant way to fold her in all of this. But Adam, I mean, you're saying that you believe that this is all leading to the fact that Episode 9 is going to be really the ultimate conclusion to this whole 9-film series, where Rey is going to be the big payoff of the whole thing.
Well, I looked around. I pay attention to a lot of the criticisms of these new films, and the big criticisms seem to be that they don't really tie in very well with the past lore, and that Rey is an overpowered character. And I got to thinking about what Yoda said about in Revenge of the Sith, that it could be a prophecy that was misread. Mm-hmm. And there's a constant doubt about whether Anakin is really the chosen one, and Yoda doesn't even want to train him. And that's really where I got down that line of thought. But I think fans really want answers. A lot of the critics, they want this to feel like a natural continuation, and I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if JJ is able to do that in a way that brings the fans together.
I would only be satisfied with that if we had some sort of indication that George Lucas himself signed off on it. And that's the problem that I'm having with the entire sequel trilogy right now, is that, and that's why I've been putting it under a microscope lately, is with the realization that George Lucas was forced out of his own story. And that's beginning to really gnaw on me a little bit and make me more critical of the sequel trilogy. And I say that as maybe a George Lucas purist, I don't know. But I've come to the realization that there will never be a Star Wars that I've ever loved as much as I love that original trilogy, specifically the first 2 films. What
do you mean the first 2?
Well, no, I mean, Jedi's fine. But,
Jedi's fine.
But no, I'm talking about myself specifically as a kid of the 70s who grew up on this stuff and the impact it made on me. Dan Madsen once said, when I was out to dinner with him and Chris Mocked, and we got into that conversation about ranking the films. And Chris was like, okay, I like Empire first, then Revenge of the Sith second. And Dan was like, wait a second. I could never put anything but the original trilogy in my top 3. And I was like, so true, Dan, so true. And that is an original generation, original trilogy fan perspective. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's just where I'm coming from at all times. I can never, ever accept anything because it always will lack the impact. you can't be 9 years old, 10 years old again. You can't be a 12-year-old again. Once that's come and gone, it's come and gone. So it'll always have that place in my heart. And so I'll put everything up to that standard. And I hear a lot of younger fans criticize original generation fans for making that the, setting the bar at that level.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just want to explain to you that is just how it is for someone who grew up in the 70s when Star Wars hit. It was like, Beatlemania for movie fans. And I don't think that as a person who considers himself to be a hardcore Beatles fan, I missed Beatlemania. I'll never know what that was like. And so I always revere the opinion, and I pay a lot of respect to the hardcore Beatle fans that I'm friends with who actually grew up during that era. It just meant something different. And the original trilogy was the Star Wars event that had that natural impact on pop culture, much like Beatlemania. The prequels were huge, but they were marketed and manufactured and rode on the coattails of the original trilogy. Everything rides on the coattails of the original trilogy. We all loved Rogue One. Imagine Rogue One without knowing anything about Star Wars. Well, I guess there's younger fans. Maybe that's their first introduction to Star Wars. And if you're one of those people, call us up, because I want to hear why, what kind of impact Rogue One made on you without having any knowledge of the grand story. I want to hear from a kid who's only seen Rogue One. He's never seen any other Star Wars film. And I want to know what he thinks of that movie. I wonder if we could find that guy or that kid or that girl or whoever, because I think everything that makes Rogue One have an impact on me is the relationship it has with the original Star Wars. Isn't that funny? I mean, I'm just kind of like bleeding my original generation fandom into the microphone right now, so everyone kind of excuse me. But I think it's interesting to put a matter of perspective out there when we're talking about something as broad and big as Star Wars, because a lot has changed over the last few years as far as how people approach and discuss Star Wars. And something that I've been loving about tonight is that's all we've been doing. We have been having a hardcore discussion about like the elements of Yoda in the Phantom Menace and all these great things we're talking about. It's even the Muppet stuff. But that's where I'm coming at as far as where I'm connecting to Star Wars. It always is related to that original trilogy. And I think when you hear a lot of original generation fans talk, that's how they're feeling in their heart. It's just a real special part of life, So,
well, Adam, what do you think?
Adam's like,
Adam?
I think, yes, I'm still here.
Adam's like, wait, did Jimmy Mac finally stop talking? Oh, he's like, yeah, I went out. I ran to the store. I came back. I made dinner for the family.
Right. Yeah, I think time will tell. I mean, I think the generation right now, I think in about 10 years, they'll look back at this trilogy with nostalgia that like my generation has for the prequels. And I think people will start to, see the whole saga as they won't break it down into trilogies at that point.
Well, that is possible. That's very possible that we've seen the last trilogy, and it's just going to continue on in sort of these drips. Adam, thank you so much, man. Thank you for calling. Thank you for being here.
Take note.
Yes.
The Benioff-Weiss announcement was about them making a trilogy of films. It was about them making a series of films.
That's a great point. There is that's a distinction. We're not talking about trilogy. We're talking about series. Very, 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 very.
So I mean, that's just kind of that kind of just rides on the coattails of what Adam from Kentucky was just talking about. So.
Yeah. All right, let's see. We've got a few more on the line. The number to call, please give us a buzz if you're listening to this live, 708-866-1737. That's 708-866-1RFR. We're going to go to area code 717. We've got a few more on the line. Who we got? Yo, 717 in the house. What's happening?
Hey, Jason. Hey, Jimmy. This is Eric from Phoenix.
Eric, welcome, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Just sitting here having a glass of wine, helping my wife wrap Christmas presents, and listening to RFR.
Oh my gosh, you're rapping already? Oh, that's great.
Well, yeah, we've got a little bit of a road trip over Christmas, so we're actually doing our Christmas here in the Phoenix area on Saturday. And I might have lied a little bit. I'm an awful rapper, so I'm helping move gifts around, position them on the wrapping paper. My wife is doing all the hard work, so just to be honest there.
There you go. Maybe having a big boy beverage while you're doing that. Yeah, that's how it goes in my house, at least. So, so Eric, what's on your mind?
Yeah, so first thing, I just want to compliment you on the RFR Christmas holiday music you guys have released. That stuff's awesome. I don't know how I missed it. Vader, did you know? Come on, guys. That's just fantastic stuff right there. So we've had a lot of fun with that. I don't know if you remember, we called in over Thanksgiving. My wife was on the line, too, when Puppet Lando was on. So the only feedback is you got to work Puppet Lando in there next year, reading some classic Christmas stories or maybe some Star Wars Shakespeare. That would have put it over the top.
Star Wars Shakespeare. So that's what your wife is reporting, that she wants to hear from Puppet Lando is Star Wars Shakespeare?
Well, no, I threw that out there. I'm just saying that the night before Christmas stuff from Puppet Lando, that kind of thing. That would have been classic. So, here's my question. So I'm going to put you in the Wayback Machine here. Take it away from the present time a little bit. What I'd love to hear from you guys is, what was your favorite Star Wars present you received as a kid for Christmas?
Easy. I can go the Ewok Village. I wanted that Ewok Village playset so bad. And I didn't care what else I got for Christmas, but this probably would have been Christmas of 1983. And man, was I excited! And I must have netted every Star Wars action figure I had in that. You remember the classic Ewok Village where you could pull the net up, and then you had the little one of the trees. You could put the character in the top, and he would slide down to the bottom. The elevator that cranked up to the top. You had the spit over the barbecue. It was just, man, was that fun! Hours and hours and hours of good times with that. That's mine.
For me,
go ahead, Jimmy. Sorry.
All right. For me, it would be the Patrol Dewback. Hours of fun. Lizard adventures in the living room. Hours of fun. Billy Mack is actually in the chat, and he confirmed the big one for me. We received the Millennium Falcon one year for Christmas, and that was a big one. That was a big deal, and I still have that one, actually. And Bill was just looking at it last night, as a matter of fact.
The original?
We're looking at the decals on there, and he's like, "Oh, man, I got to get a new guy for the stickers." He's because they all faded. So Bill has a sticker guy. He's got all the connections. I got a sticker. Remember that one time he said to me, "Hey, you need any Death Star foam? I got a guy."
He's got a guy for that. Some people have a guy for a new muffler. Some people have a guy for painting the house. Maybe some HVAC work. Bill's got a guy for some Death Star foam.
Yeah. Need any foam? He's like got the shifty eyes while he's talking. But so, yeah, I guess the Millennium Falcon would have to be the one. I do remember sitting under the Christmas tree with that Millennium Falcon. But the Patrol Dewback was a good one, too. And there actually is a picture of me in a very uncomfortable and itchy-looking Christmas sweater holding that Patrol Dewback. And I got, like, the Ringo Starr hair and stuff. I was, like, 9 years old. Got the bad teeth, pre-braces. Yeah. So I got to dig up that picture. Maybe I'll flip it out there to the Patreon audience only. There,
What about you, Eric? What do you have a favorite Star Wars Christmas present?
Yeah, and that's pretty easy for me. I mean, we had a couple of the ships, the X-Wing, TIE Fighter, Snowspeeder, Landspeeder, but we didn't have a lot of big ships. I never had the Falcon. But I think it was 1978, Christmas 1978. We got the Death Star playset, guys.
Oh,
now you talk about cool.
Geez.
That's the best.
Hey, by the way,
fantastic.
I don't want to interrupt your story, but I just have to throw this out here. Why was it? Does anyone know why that playset was never repackaged in Empire or Jedi packaging? I mean, that was a hallmark of the Kenner line, is they would just recycle these things, throw new packaging on them. Why was that never brought back out again?
I don't think much of the original Star Wars stuff was repackaged for Empire. The action figures were, but I don't think
the Falcon was.
The Falcon, but the Falcon is a recurring thing throughout all the films. That makes sense. But was the Patrol Dewback released with Return of the Jedi logo on it? I don't think so. Maybe it was, but I don't think it was. I think film-specific things didn't get rolled over. Action figures did, but film-specific play sets, etc. Like there wasn't Empire Strikes Back release for Land of the Jawas. No, that didn't happen.
Yeah, you're right. I guess it was really. Oh, that's right. Yeah, of course they redid it in white plastic instead of tan plastic. Yeah, but Eric, so tell us about
the stand crawler tread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, tell us about that Christmas morning when you woke up, and was that one of those gifts that you saw the box wrapped and you knew what it was?
No.
This
is the classic thing. We opened up regular presents, okay? So we had presents under the tree. We opened up all the presents, and we got done. And my mom said, hey, wait, isn't there another present for the boys? And my dad said, oh, yeah, you know what? Santa left that downstairs, just a second. And he went down in the basement and brought it up from the basement. And it just blew my brother and I away. And I would have been 6 at the time, and my brother would have been 4. And man, I tell you what, we had hours and hours and hours of fun playing with that thing. And then we had blocks. And so we would actually add to the Death Star playset with blocks and add extra rooms and stuff. And it was fantastic. But the funny thing you were just mentioning about Billy Mack having a sticker guy, that playset, I don't know if you guys had that, but it came with a Dianoga. And at the time, I don't think it was called the Dianoga. I think it was just called Trash Compactor Creature or something like that. But my brother was scared to death of that toy from that scene in the theater. And keep in mind, he's only 4. So I don't know what happened to it. Literally, I saw it when we opened it, and then it disappeared. So I think my mom did something with it. So if Billy Mack has that Dianoga guy, I probably could use that because
your brother's afraid of it. I'm throwing it away. He's scared of it.
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what I think happened. I think that thing got tossed with the wrapping paper.
Oh, no. Well, I'm sure if anybody knows where to get a good repro or vintage original, I'm sure Billy Mack can. He's probably got a guy.
Yeah, he's in the chat right now.
Well, they did. You guys remember? They did the. Oh crap! Who's the company that does the original action figures?
Gentle Giant, the giant versions. Yeah, Gentle Giant.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I've got like the Boba Fett, which is just a fantastic. It's like one of my favorite things, and Blue Snaggletooth. But they did that Dianoga, but I either couldn't afford it or it was a rare thing, or I said I'm not waiting in line for 4 hours to buy that thing, so I missed out on it. But
good for you. Stand in line for the man. Hey, Eric, thank you so much for calling and taking us down the memory lane, Star Wars style. I got a few good Star Wars Christmas stories. Maybe we'll get them out here before the show is up. But thank you so much for calling from sunny
Phoenix. Yeah, I you know what? Before we take another caller, I have to share a story with you. And we got an email from Paula. And Paula says, I'm going to go ahead and read her email here. She says, my name is Paula, and I'm very possibly married to one of the biggest Star Wars lovers there is. When we bought our house years back, my husband bargained with me that I could name any children we have if he could have a Star Wars Lego room. So imagine this, Jim. You get married, you make a bargain, you say, look, you can name all the kids.
Right.
I won't have a say as long as I can have my. I mean, that is like one step. That's one step above like Rumpelstiltskin, like trading your children in for a wish.
It's just more than that. It's selling your soul to the devil is what it is. I did the same thing myself. You say, hey, you can name the children. You can do anything you want. I just want a Star Wars room. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you find that down the road you need that room.
Yeah.
Because they never let you forget. You always owe them for the Star Wars room.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, in this case,
I'm totally joking. I swear, I am totally joking. Wendy has been nothing but supportive of my passion and my hobby and my fascination with Star Wars and collecting Star Wars stuff. And I have a Star Wars room that I've been doing a lot of work in there lately. It's real nice in there now. And I have a Star Wars Christmas tree up. And so I was so thankful that Wendy gives me this area in the house to go hang out and really get my Star Wars on. So I was so proud of it. I said, honey, come in here, look at the Star Wars Christmas tree and everything. And you should have seen the look on her face. She was halfway down the hallway and seriously, the eye roll, the, oh my God, please no, please God, no. And then it suddenly occurred to me, I haven't seen her set foot in this room for like 10 years. And that's the truth.
Really?
So, yes. So it's nice that I have been able to work out this bargain. But at the same time, whenever anything comes up that could be debatable about household management, I always get reminded that I have the best room in the house for Star Wars stuff.
Now, is it really the best room in the house, or is it only the best room in the house because you decided to fill it with Star Wars stuff? That's the question. Yeah.
We both agree that it is the best room in the house for different reasons.
It's a great room. It's great. I've slept in there many times.
But so, enjoy your Lego room, sir.
Yeah. She goes on. She says, long story short, I now have a Lego room, a homemade barn door to cover it up, a 2-year-old Eloise, and one on the way. My husband listens to Rebel Force Radio faithfully on his commute to work while he's running, doing chores, or building one of his many Legos. Our
he
daughter,
can do all this because the shows are so long.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Our daughter now has books, dolls, and clothes because of this extreme love. At this point, Star Wars isn't just an interest in our home. It's a way of life. I should mention that I had never seen the Star Wars movies until I met him. I guess you could say he's brought me to the dark side. For a wedding gift, I reached out to someone to do something special and surprising for my husband, who owns nearly all of the Star Wars Destiny game. And he messaged me back, excited to help, and sent a wedding card and signed promo card for my husband.
My God.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty cool.
Got to do all that.
Yeah, it was Luke. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I skipped over. It was Lucas Litzinger. It was the Star Wars Destiny game. So
all right, I'm writing his name down, and I'm going to ask him because he set such a high standard. Lucas Litzinger is like, he's inviting them to weddings and sending them stuff. Now we got to do all that.
Yeah. No, Lucas Litzinger, he's the senior game designer there at Wizards of the Coast.
Oh, okay.
So he's that guy. So Paula reached out and said, hey, my husband, he owns like all this stuff. And so Lucas, he sent the signed promo card. She says, I'm emailing you in hopes that maybe we could collaborate to surprise my husband for Christmas this year. I think it'd be really neat if you were interested in sharing our story on one of your podcasts without saying his name until the end to see if he catches on and give him a shout out. It would sincerely make him the happiest. He always one-ups my gifts, and I want to be the one bragging this year. Well, guess what, Paula? You can brag because Eli Goika, your wonderful husband, has an official shout-out here on Rebel Force Radio on our holiday episode. So, Eli and Paula, thank you so much for being excellent Star Wars fans and listeners to us here at Rebel Force Radio. You both are wonderful. I'm so glad that you have little Eloise. And, Eli, I'm glad you have your Star Wars Lego room as well. And you've got a baby on the way. So,
jeez, I ruined that whole thing. You know, now I feel like garbage. I ruined that whole thing.
How'd you ruin it? What are you talking about? What'd you ruin?
Said it was making a deal with the devil and
I don't know. I've never met Paula. I mean, who knows?
Well, I wasn't talking about Paula. I don't know who I was talking about. You know what? I should really just keep my damn fool mouth shut. Hey, on a lighter note, today, like I said, is Dylan McInerney's birthday. He's 16 years old. I'm so proud of him. He's such a great guy. And Jason, I sent you a few Dylan highlights from
I've got them right here. I've got this one. This is one of my favorites. This goes way back to Dylan playing with the Ewok. Now, we were just talking about the Ewok Village. It was one of my fondest Star Wars memories for Christmas time because I got the Ewok Village in December of 1983. But young Dylan Mack found himself playing in Dad's Star Wars room, and we've got audio. Jim, you decided just to run tape on this?
Yeah, he was just playing. He was being really cute, and he was talking while he was playing. And so I said, oh, wow, I got to pick up these moments here. This is fun. And so I hit record on the old, what was that? The Ampex? No, it was the Tascam. And I just started rolling on that and pointed the microphone at him. He didn't know. But it led to a funny moment where I thought he was starting to take some liberties by introducing characters from Ep 4 with characters from Ep 6, which to me didn't make much sense.
We were talking around Christmas time, actually, about that feeling of Christmas, as Ray Charles said.
Yes.
That feeling of Christmas with Star Wars, where you wake up on Christmas morning and you get that wonderful gift. And I mentioned about waking up one Christmas morn and getting my Ewok Village, which was very exciting.
Yes.
So Jimmy Mack starts thinking about it, and he says, look, I decided to get my Ewok Village, obviously the vintage, not that crappy Robin Hood Prince of Thieves version that came out later, the real Ewok Village, out of his attic, and let his 5-year-old play with it. And he secretly recorded it. And this is very cute. You got to hear this.
Awesome! Where's Luke? I need Luke. Guy's going down here. Hope you do. Dad, will you get the sandcrawler?
What do you want?
Sandcrawler.
Well, don't get the sandcrawler down. You're still playing with the Ewoks.
Well, the Ewoks will go in the sandcrawler.
The Ewoks will go in the sandcrawler? Hey, we're G-level.
What?
We are a G-level canon family. Do you understand me?
What does that mean?
Nah, forget it. I'll get the sandcrawler.
That's what it's like to play Star Wars in the McInerney.
And the thing was that I think we were all with him going, put Ewoks in the sandcrawler? What are you, crazy?
You put Ewoks under the sandcrawler.
Oh, boy, that brings back memories. My gosh. So how old would Dylan have been then? He was what?
He said 5.
5, yeah.
5.
Wow.
That was Pete Nadel, by the way, on that.
It was.
Vintage archive. That was before podcasting was even invented. Nobody had iPods, iPhones, nothing.
Yeah.
And the only way you could get that show was through your dental fillings, on your molars. That was the only way you could pull it in. So long ago. But do you have any other clips?
I do. This is another one. let's see, what do we got? We've got, oh, this is great. This is you decided to run some tape. Yeah, actually, this was a video that you took. So this is audio from the video that you took of Dylan when he was watching an episode of Rebels, when he realized that Ahsoka Tano was alive and well in the Rebels timeline.
Yes.
This was big. This is when we found out that she was Fulcrum.
So she suddenly appears on the screen.
Yeah.
Then Dylan lost his mind. I shot it on YouTube, and I think it's the most popular thing we uploaded. The most viral thing we've ever uploaded to YouTube was that video of Dylan freaking out. It was totally legit.
So here it is.
That wave captured, we couldn't reveal the other rebels to the Empire. That was the protocol. The protocol has changed.
Who's this?
Fulcrum. Ahsoka.
What?
Name is Ahsoka Tano.
Why?
Because of you and your apprentice. Many in this system and beyond have heard your...
Is that Ashley?
Gave them hope in their dark...
You're recording me, aren't you? This isn't going anywhere.
So what? That little voice. What? Oh, yeah. He doesn't sound like that anymore.
He looks at me. He's like, "You're recording this?" He goes, "This better not go anywhere."
Oh, no, just thousands and thousands. Yeah, right. Views. We got another one here. What's this one? This is The Stars and the Wars. What's going on? I don't remember this one.
Okay, this is an outtake. Or maybe it's not even an outtake, but it's just a quick hit from Chris Mock's Star Wars fan documentary, The Force Within Us. Yeah, and so we're standing amongst the Star Wars action figures in the Star Wars room at my house, and Dylan is standing there with me.
For Star Wars?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. Now, you say that without hesitation, don't you?
Yeah.
What is it that you like about Star Wars?
I like fighting, like the wars.
Do you like the wars?
Yeah.
You like the battles? Do you like
the stars and the wars?
The stars and the wars. That's what you like the best about Star Wars is?
Yeah, the stars and the wars.
The stars and the wars. Okay.
He's got his mom's sass right there. Right there.
Right there. Put me on the spot, Pops. You're going to put me on the spot.
I could hear Wendy saying that. I like the stars and the wars. Now get out of my face. That's great. Well, happy birthday, Joe. 16.
Yes.
Wow. Oh, my gosh. So is he... Now, I know that Michael didn't have that much interest in driving, and that's not unique to just Michael. You know, I see a lot of friends that I know and that I have that have kids that are of driving age. It's not as big of a deal as it was, Jim, I think, when you and I were kids. I mean, I couldn't wait to get those temps and it was like freedom for me. But in the world of Uber and I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just Uber or it's just, I don't know, green conscious kids that don't want to pollute the earth with their vehicles. I don't know what it is, but they don't seem as hyped up about it.
The car culture doesn't exist like it did for us as kids. There's not that car culture. There's no more drive-ins. There's no more places where you can go and just cruise. I recommend kids go out and watch George Lucas's American Graffiti and get schooled on car culture and what it was like to cruise. And I'm not claiming I was there in Modesto in 1965 cruising the streets, but you know, there was strong elements of car culture very evident when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s for sure, and even in the 90s to a degree. But you just don't get that element of like, let's just hop in a car and go see America. Let's hit the road.
Yeah, right.
Those, you know, I mean, people are more nervous about personal safety now than they. So the call to adventure on the highways sometimes gets diminished in that kind of way. And that's a sad reflection on society in my book, folks. But, hey, we're not here to talk about that. Let's talk about Star Wars.
Let's talk about it. Let's go to area code 859. Hello, 859. You're on with Rebel Force Radio. Happy holidays. Who is this?
Hey, Jimmy Mack. Hey, Jason. This is B. Willie, Northern Kentucky, Greater Cincinnati area. How are you, sir?
All right. Great. Thanks for hanging out with us.
How's it going?
appreciate the patience. You were on hold for
Absolutely.
a good while, so it's good to hear from you.
It is. Thanks for that, Jason. And been a long time listener, first time caller, and all that fun radio stuff that you say.
Love that.
I got a couple things. Really excited. Sorry, I got a couple things for you guys. Getting on the whole what's missing from Star Wars, and I'm a big fan of what Kyle Newman said, which was there's a real lack of new myth being added to Star Wars. And I was just wondering what you guys thought, because like when we were getting ready for Force Awakens, there was, the cross-guarded lightsaber was kind of like a knight. You had the Knights of Ren. I'm thinking they're going to mix in a little European myth. We didn't get that. Last Jedi comes around. We're at the first Jedi Temple. You have the Prime Jedi. All kinds of opportunity for new myth, and we never got it. I was just wondering what you guys thought about that.
Well, I think that there was a lot of great groundwork that was laid in The Force Awakens, and I think it didn't pay off. I think that there was the establishment, the beginning, the start of myth and something deeper, but a lot of it was just abandoned. I wish that I could come up with lots of excuses, and I've tried. But the more I try to justify it in my own mind, the more it falls apart. I think that, and we got a great voicemail, which I hope we can get to before we close things out tonight, about episode 8 in particular. And it's actually quite brilliant. And he speaks to, who is it from? Let's see if I got it here. I don't have a name. But hopefully we can play it, because he really talks about this contrarian way that Rian Johnson sort of molded and shaped the story of Episode 8, where he just sort of said, well, what's the worst thing? What's the opposite of this? What's the opposite of that? And let's go that direction. So it was a little bit too much of the worst, the opposite, the thing you would least expect. So that's my take on it. I think the promise was there. I think JJ respects, understands myth, and started to lay the groundwork, but it just wasn't carried through. What do you think, Jim? Is there a lack of myth? Do you agree with Kyle? What we're being asked here is that the problem with the sequel trilogy?
I appreciate the tighter focus on character stuff. But we were talking about that earlier in the show. Of course, character stuff is important, but you also do need that mythology, the spirituality, which is but that all boils down to myth when you're talking about Star Wars. Obviously, the Force is their spirituality, and that is non-existent in the real world. But on certain levels, you can apply it to different faith and whatnot. But the thing that more than the mythology, I don't know, we've seen expansions of the mythology all along, I think, through JJ and through Rian Johnson. I think the toning down the epic scale of events is something that has made, in my opinion, the sequel films a little claustrophobic. What I mean by that is that where are the epic saber duels? How come we don't get any lightsaber duels in this? Rey and Kylo lacked the choreography of things that we saw in the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy. In my book, it just seemed to be like they were just slashing at each other, and then they would talk, and then they would slash at each other and talk. As far as the battles go, I mentioned earlier, let's compare the Battle of Hoth to the Battle of Crate. The Battle of Hoth was complex and had character moments weaved in throughout, and you saw a progression of events. The Battle of Crate is more or less just like rushing head on at each other and then veering off and not having much happen. on that level. Now, there's a lot with the Battle of the Crate. I mean, when those TIE fighters come in and they're blasting the salt plains and it's flying up in the red and all of that, I mean, you really, the sound design, it's just amazing. It's so intense in my book, that, you know, those things. But the story stops getting told. It's just rushing head on until, of course, Rose and Finn, they have their moment. That's the big moment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But, basically it's just like rushing at each other. And so the real story, it gets interweaved in throughout then. And then the Falcon. That part with the Falcon, that's cool. There's a lot I like about the whole crate sequence. I found myself describing that to Wendy because Wendy can't sit through The Last Jedi, which I find interesting, because I would have thought there were things in that movie she would naturally be attached to, but she doesn't want to say. Maybe it just makes her think of that Star Wars room that she but what, this is something I'm going to have to work out throughout the holidays. I'll report to everyone in January, and we'll see where we're at with that psychologically in my house. But I found myself explaining to her the end of The Last Jedi. It was to fill in a blank. We were watching something on TV, and the end of The Last Jedi became the subject matter. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I found myself explaining to her the end of The Last Jedi. I was like, holy crap, listening to myself explain it, it's just like I have goosebumps. It's amazing. But it's just like when you match it up to the Battle of Crate and the Battle of Hoth, one seems, Hoth is like this elegant, this thing where the events go from A to B to C to D, and the Battle of Crate is just like rushing head on, and then the fallout of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I find myself having a hard time articulating it. Something probably Paul Bateman could talk about in greater detail than I can, because he's kind of the guy who sort of planted that in my head to begin with. Is like looking really critically at that and then comparing it to the Battle of Hoth. So, I'd like to get going with Paul on Star Wars Influences episodes. They just haven't been happening lately, and not for any reason. It's like with Bondcast. There's no reason why we're not doing them. We're just not doing them. So we'll get to the bottom of that. I hope in 2019 we'll get to the bottom of that.
Well, Willie, you called. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, when it comes to Last Jedi, it took me a long time. I mean, I saw Last Jedi, and I found myself doing the whole defend thing for Last Jedi. People are like, "Well, what do you think? You're this big Star Wars guy. You're supposed to know everything." And I'm like, guys, I'm still contemplating it. I'm still processing it. And it wasn't until I was listening to your guys' show and you had Kyle Newman on, and when he said there was a lack of myth, that Last Jedi, all they did was deconstruct the myth and threw it back at us. And I said, that's it. That's what's missing. That's what's bothering me. And that's where I've come to, after a lot of thought about it, is I feel like The Last Jedi is a good movie, but it's not a Star Wars movie. And I hate to say that. And it breaks my heart to say that, but that's just kind of where, I guess that's the bottom line after I've fully digested the movie after a year. That's where I stand now. In another year.
The reality of the situation, though, is it very much is a Star Wars movie, and there's nothing you or I or anyone can do about it. And I think we'll come back to it and look at it in a different way after Episode 9 comes out.
Oh, absolutely.
It depends on how effective
absolutely. I was just ready to say that.
So, okay. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, take that away from you or cut you off.
No.
But that's just what I think. I think it's the jury is still out on Episode 8. And I think it's great that everyone's picking it apart like the way we are, because what we were talking about at the very beginning of the show, what's going to happen for the future of Star Wars? Well, I think that, fan collaboration with creatives will actually be able to inform the film studios about what Star Wars films mean to the majority of the fan base. And so, and they're looking at social media and stuff. I mean, these movie studios, they've been surveying fans for years and years and years, long before social media. But now everyone can just at any given moment, no matter where you're at. I mean, you could be on a bus, you could be in the bathroom, you could be wherever, and you could just broadcast your thoughts about something. And the likelihood of the creatives seeing it is pretty good. So, so it's interesting now. There's this kind of synergy between fans and films and franchises specifically. It's a real tightrope. It's a tightrope that everyone's walking right now, and it's kind of interesting to watch how it all goes down. I just think that Star Wars really should have started spreading its wings after this trilogy was completed, and really do the handoff in an elegant way to other characters, Finn, Rey, and Poe, and bank the future on them. That's what I thought the plan was. I thought we would see an elegant exit from the original heroes and a wrap up of the Jedi Sith, the tension between the two of them. And with the sequel trilogy, we're seeing this empire that just came out of nowhere. I mean, at least with the original Empire, you saw all the mechanics behind it and how it was all a manipulation. And it was fueled by the dark side of the Force, specifically the Sith Lords. And then so to bring back a carbon copy of that without any explanation with the Snoke, what's a Snoke? I mean, where does it all tie in? And people want to point at the original trilogy and say, hey, listen, well, when the original trilogy came out, you didn't know anything about the Emperor, but boom, there he was. There was no backstory about him. But I digress. I say no, there was. That was episode 6. We got episodes 1 through 3. That's happened now. That has happened. And I think everything needs to be reflected onto those.
It's happened, and that's become the standard, and that's become what we expect from Star Wars, is that there's no accidents, there's no everything is deliberate, everything is a choice, and strategic, and all of that. Wait, look, whether that's really how the sausage is made is one thing, but that's how it's been presented to us, that none of this was by accident. This was all very deliberately chosen and pieced together. Well, Willie, thank you so much for calling, my friend. Thank you, and have a wonderful holiday. We've got time for one more call, but before we get to that, I do want to play this voicemail. I really, really appreciate the idea that's being talked about here. So see if we can get
Hey,
this.
Jimmy and Jason. Love this show. You guys are awesome. Last show, you talked about Luke's character after Return of the Jedi, and that it's been challenging for storytellers, including Lucas, to figure out what to do with his character. But I think the answer is simple. After the hero completes their journey, then the hero becomes the mentor. Luke doesn't need a dramatic, massive arc. He just becomes the new mentor, like Obi-Wan. They've said that before. The new mentor supports the new character. So the audience has tense adventures with Rey, but feels comforted by the new mentor, which is exactly what The Force Awakens did with Han Solo, and everybody loved that story. Han didn't have a dramatic arc. He definitely had impactful scenes, but his character didn't change. You don't need to have a giant arc. Rian Johnson thought of the hardest thing for each character to deal with, but that is the most formulaic writing you could come up with. It isn't unique or eye-opening. It is just contrarian. Doing the opposite of what everyone is expecting isn't original. It's just the opposite.
Amen.
Everybody thought things were going to go a certain way because JJ left hints. And if you go a different way than that, that's not awesome. That's just misleading. So, creative storytelling feels authentic and natural. And Rian Johnson just followed a reverse formula, but he still followed a formula. Luke in exile should have been Luke searching and meditating for answers. He could have realized that violence begets more violence. Luke shouldn't have been bitter and angry. He should have been lost, maybe desperately searching for answers. Then Rey showed up, calmed him down, offered fresh eyes and renewed hope.
Oh, wait a minute. What happened here? Did we lose you? Oh,
and then the two of them, Luke as mentor, got back to helping the galaxy. So I think that, I don't know. Rian Johnson just followed a bad formula and didn't see Luke, or I don't know, didn't see Luke for who he is in his heart or his essence, and just kind of had a not the best path. But I think Rian Johnson is a great director. I think he could make a great Star Wars movie. I just didn't want him making a story with the Force Awakens characters. So you guys are awesome. Keep up the great work. This is Travis in Concord. Take care. Thanks,
all
guys.
right,
Bye.
Travis, thank you. That was a great call. I love when he says, look, that's not necessarily clever. That's just as formulaic as what you're trying to combat against. That's just contrarian. It's just doing the opposite. And then he really, I think, doubles down and when he says, that's not clever, that's just misleading. That's just misleading. And I think a lot of us felt we were misled. But as you say, Jim, there's always the possibility
right.
We'll see something in 9.
In 9 that will put things on a more universal path, something that will be a little more acceptable by all of us who have studied this saga for 40 plus years. A left turn at this point is ill-advised. And I think now in retrospect, as we look at The Last Jedi, it was a left turn. And, you'd be hard-pressed to disagree with that. Taking a lot of risks. It's interesting that the caller brings up Luke on Ahch-To in meditation, connected with the Force. And that was a J.J. Abrams concept. That was an intention to feature Luke at the end of the film when Rey comes upon him there as he's staring out onto the coast. And he is meditating, and there are actual boulders that he is levitating with the Force. But due to Rian Johnson's script, that was removed from The Last Jedi, or from The Force Awakens. There were many, many, many 11th hour editing decisions made on The Force Awakens. It's all documented. You can look it all up. There's a making of book. Or is there a making of book? There's an art of book, which
the art of
is
book
very
is where
informative.
a lot of that shows up, yeah.
And there's also a commentary track from J.J. Abrams, which explains a lot. And I think he does actually go into this ending that he had in mind for The Force Awakens. And also the Force Back was something that was an 11th hour editing decision. And I think that was based on feedback that JJ was getting from the studio that The Last Jedi is going to be going and, taking these left turns. So they tailored The Force Awakens to fit that narrative. They should have given Rian Johnson an executive producer credit for The Force Awakens, for crying out loud. If he went to arbitration, he'd probably win that. But because his influence is felt on that film, clearly. JJ has not revealed why he edited The Force back in the way he did, but it came very late in the game. And the Force back was supposed to explain things like the Knights of Ren, like how Maz received the lightsaber. We see a clip from the Force back in the original trailer for The Force Awakens. You see somebody, I think it's Leia, handing Luke's lightsaber to Maz Kanata's. I mean, it's clearly her hand. That, I believe, was a segment from the Force back. Also, you see in the Force back Luke's hand reaching out onto R2. That was included in the trailer. But there were a bunch of things in the trailer that didn't, the original trailer that did not end up in the final film. And that just goes to show you how late in the game this film was getting edited down. And choices were made to create the edit and fashion it in a way where Rian Johnson's script can fit into it a little bit easier. And one of those edits was
removing the CGI boulders that Luke was floating as he meditated in the Force. So, a lot of people pointed out to me because I said when I was talking about Yoda showing up and he goes, "Missed you, I have." And it's like, "Where you been, dude?" Well, obviously, he has not been communicating with Luke because Luke has cut himself off from the Force. But I almost had the feeling that Yoda had stopped communicating with Luke long before that.
Right at Endor.
Why do I feel that?
I feel like that was the last time he saw him.
Why do we feel that? Because like in the classic EU novels, I remember it was that Luke was communicating with Ben and Yoda for up to 5 years after the events of Return of the Jedi. Ben makes his final spiritual appearance to Luke at the beginning of Heir to the Empire.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Yeah, yes. he's like, "Hey, I'm fading out here, pal." So, they could only stay connected to the Force. But, I mean, of course, that's Timothy Zahn, expanded universe canon, and for better or for worse, that stuff has been excised from the film canon. And so we obviously see with Yoda, he's making appearances 30 years later. So it's like, he got those Duracell batteries that Darth Vader was all pissed off about when that little rabbit was in the commercials.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Or was that the Energizer, not Duracell?
Energizer, yeah. Nothing outlasts the Energizer.
Yeah, I don't have to be specific. What do I care? They're not paying me. So, so do we have time for one more call? We're running late. Let's do one more
caller. This is area code 509. You've been hanging with us for all night. Yo, who we talking to?
Oh, hey, Jason. This is Austin up in Bellingham.
Austin.
How you doing?
Austin in Bellingham.
Yeah.
Very well. How are you? Happy holidays.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, glad to be on.
Where's Bellingham? Bellingham where?
Oh, I'm sorry. Bellingham, Washington.
Washington. All right.
Last time I called in was for the Force Awakens Thanksgiving trailer.
Oh my gosh, that's been a long time. Wow. Wow. Lots changed since then. Oh, that's great, man. Thank you.
10 years. So.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much. What's on your mind tonight? As we, we're kind of looking back on, I guess you could say, we're very close here to the 4-year anniversary of The Force Awakens, 1 year after The Last Jedi. We've had a lot of Star Wars in the last 4 years.
There is. I have to definitely echo your last listener show was fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
Great stuff, and I echo a lot of what you guys are saying. I'm totally with you, Jason. Like, I feel like there should be a Star Wars movie right now. It's weird how quickly the feeling.
It's a tradition now, I think. Yeah.
Early summer movie to a Christmas movie. I mean, it makes sense with, Star Wars is always about getting toys on Christmas, so I think it all kind of fit that. But,
yeah, I love it.
Well, I was getting really revved up on your Last Jedi conversation and Jimmy's just kind of breaking his thoughts down from watching Last Jedi a couple of shows ago. Man, I could listen to that for 2 days straight.
Oh, well, thanks, man.
That definitely brought up a couple thoughts.
And I don't mean to dwell in any sort of negative stuff, but I did view the film with a keen, just like a keen focus on, okay, these are the things I've been reading online that really piss people off. So I want to know, how do I feel emotionally about this stuff? Legitimately, And I felt like I'd given myself enough time. Like I hadn't watched the film for a long time. And I got to say, it was for this old school Star Wars fan, it was a refreshing experience to go through because you read so much online and stuff. And then when you see things in the film, you're like, that's really not that big a deal. Come on. Why are people getting so upset about that? And so I get the broader picture kind of things. And a lot of things that Rian Johnson has done and said since the film has come out it's colored my view a little bit. Yeah, it has. That's unavoidable. But I found on the whole, I can still watch it and say, okay, it's a Star Wars movie. And, that caller earlier said it's just not a Star Wars movie. And I appreciate that sentiment. And I've had lots of my closest Star Wars friends say those things to me, but I can still watch it and find a ton of entertainment value in it. It's not all.
Sure.
I mean, like I said, the Battle of Crate. That when I think about it, that's pretty amazing stuff. That's real. There's some great eye candy going on there when those TIE fighters are flying around and the Falcon. It's all whatever. It's just a movie. It's just a movie. Sometimes you have to say that. Come on. Sometimes you have to pinch yourself on the arm and go, "Hey, calm down. It's just a movie." Okay, it's just a movie. I feel that way about sports fandom sometimes too. I feel that way about sports fandom because I found many times I find myself going down that rabbit hole, and I just go, "Hey, wait. It's just a game. It's just a game."
Yeah, totally.
Settle down. Tomorrow will happen. If we're all lucky, tomorrow will happen. That's all we should care about.
Yeah. Star Wars, I mean, look, my dad was a professional football player, but
Who do you play for? Who do you play for? I want to look up his stats. What's his name?
Brian Flonis, Seattle Seahawks. He was a linebacker. He actually has kind of a Rudy-esque story.
Oh, yeah?
Which is pretty cool. But
what's the last name?
Yeah. Sacked Joe Montana 4 times in a preseason game.
Yes!
Back in the early 80s, yeah.
Suck it, Montana. What was his name? Say it again. The last name.
Brian Flonis. Flones.
Brian Flonis. He's my all-time favorite now.
Yeah, he only played for 3 years. He got injured his rookie year, but yeah.
All right, back to Star Wars.
Yeah, back to Star. Hey, I'd love to talk about my dad for that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I only brought that up. Like Star Wars is my sport, and if you look at it, it's like, hey, we won the World Series 3 times in a row. And then we definitely made the playoffs, with the prequels. Some would argue we maybe won the Super Bowl again with some of those. And with the new ones, I mean, maybe for somebody that, some people, I feel like maybe or like for a sports analogy, I think, maybe we're in the Final Four, but I don't know that we made it all the way necessarily, but that's okay. I keep rooting for the home team and, maybe
that's
we'll
the thing. That's
get a ring
the thing.
again
next
year.
You don't want to root against Star Wars. You just don't want. You always want to pull for the home team. Absolutely, I totally hear you and respect
I think Star Wars is really unique that way. Everyone wants the best for Star Wars.
Absolutely,
and I think that's why there's so many big feelings about it. For good or for bad, it's like everyone wants Star Wars to win so badly.
Yeah,
if it feels like it doesn't at all, it's just like it's totally upsetting. But
it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. That's
it really
what it is. And we've got so much of our childhoods, not just our own childhoods, but in many cases the childhoods of our children wrapped up in this mythology, and we just want to make sure that it's handled with the TLC that we feel that it's deserved. And even we've heard stories over the years of George Lucas accusing people on his own staff of being too quote unquote precious with Star Wars.
Sure.
But he's George Lucas, he can say that. It's his creation, but other people saying that, I don't know. But
that right there, Jason, your whole conversation about the balance of the Force, I mean, this is something that's it gets my blood hot because, with George Lucas gone, it's like, he's so explicit, like in your last show, he said, light side of the Force is, to sum up, not being selfish. Dark side of the Force is being selfish and possessive. Like that is the message he wants to communicate with these films, if that's what the balance of the Force means. And, there's a lot of room for different opinions and different thoughts on like what you said, like what Star Wars means to people. But if there's no common ground, and I feel like this is why it's kind of, this is an interesting topic of conversation with what Disney's doing right now. If there's not any common ground that we can stand on, like you were saying in your show before, what is Star Wars? What makes Star Wars? If all of a sudden we don't have any common ground to say, yeah, that is Star Wars, let's move from there, then the whole thing falls apart, in my opinion. I think we need some grounding and having, maybe saying, yeah, there is light and dark, there is good and bad, which is and culturally, that's a big topic of conversation right now. But that's George Lucas' stance. He invented it, and I really hope Disney doesn't deviate from that, because George created this, and I don't know. I feel very strongly about keeping his original intent as the through line for all Star Wars stories.
I agree. He was the guy that was talking to Joseph Campbell. He was the guy reading all those books. He was the guy synthesizing all of that into this story, all those things that make us think as human beings and kind of touch us in a very primal way. Well, Austin, thank you so much for joining us, man. Please call us again. We know you called us before. We would love to have you back. Happy holidays to you and yours, and
thank you very much.
And best to your dad, the former NFL player there that sacked Joe Montana. How many times, Jim?
3 times, was it? Brian Flores. Brian Flores, linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks from 1981 to 1982. College, Washington State. So, yeah, he is our him and, of course, Tom Savage. Tom Savage, who is now, I think he signed on with his 3rd team. I hope Tom's listening to this as he trains and works out. He signed on with, is he with Cincinnati now? Yeah, he's with the Bengals. So he's out there in your home state of Ohio, Jason.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Yeah, Tom Savage. He's been moving around the league this year, but he's a Star Wars fan, so we root for him to have great success in the NFL wherever he's at. So Tom Savage, quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals, and Brian Flores, the great linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. Those are we're NFL affiliated, I think.
I think we are.
First
I think
Star Wars podcast to have
the
NFL
stamp of approval for sure.
Sure.